Well, Lena Dunham to me is just absolutely the symbol of a certain kind of neuroticism which masquerades as feminism. I mean, Lena Dunham has a lot of problems that have to do with body image. I call her the Indra Dworkin of today. This exposure of the body as something ugly and as something as repugnant, and yet somehow as sexual, and the implied blame that if you find me ugly, then you don't understand that I am woman as she is, okay, and you are a sexist, okay. I'm sorry, no, you are just a big pile of pudding.
Hi, I'm Ella Whelan from Spiked Online, and today I'm in Philadelphia talking to Professor Camille Paglia, who is the Professor of Media Studies and Humanities at the University of Arts in Philadelphia, and also the author of many books, most recently Glittering Images. So Camille, thank you for coming. You know, one of the most demeaning things that is happening to women at the moment is feminism. It's campus feminism that are telling young women that they are too weak, too vulnerable, and unable to get on with life and get on and deal with the things that happen to them themselves without the kind of authorities stepping in. Where do you see this as coming from? It hasn't just dropped out of the sky. You know, these aren't just kind of nuts young women going around dragging their mattresses around campus for fun. Where has it come from?
Well, a problem is that young women today, at least in America, I don't know how it is abroad, but in America, there's a whole generation of young people have been raised in a very protected environment right now. They seem, as a college, as a classroom teacher, I have to say that they just seem to me as if their view of the world, their education was, from my observation, was rather banal. That is, they've been taught humanitarian fellow feeling. They've been taught how to get along, no bullying. Okay, they've taught to be very nice about anyone different, like transgender or people with a disability and so on and so forth. But they have very little sense of world history. They have a very little sense of world geography. Now, I think it's really a serious problem in the United States. Whereas in Europe, with so many different countries and also England and the UK in general has that international kind of perspective coming from the remnants of the old British Empire. So there's a sense of the world. As when one listens to BBC News, it's about everywhere in the world. America is extremely insular. We're separated by these giant oceans from everything else. So, and then there's Canada up there, and there's Mexico down there. But basically, it's like this. Each one of some of our states are as big as the countries of Europe. And so that's where I feel that the most pernicious aspects of feminism are really hatched in the United States, and because of this insularity, and also because of our very strange college system, which has gotten more and more recreational. I mean, college has nothing to do with education. Okay, it's sort of this social experience that people are sort of packed off to that now costs an absolute fortune as bankrupting students. The idea that there's any central educational curriculum is a long abandoned. It's a cafeteria style thing where people are, well, you need to choose something from this group of courses and that group of courses and that group and then you have post-structuralism and postmodernism having undermined any idea of history as having meaning. All interpretation is simply what we project and import into the materials, and therefore there's a style of writing now about society that is very fragmented. It's like the new historicism. Everything is very atomized and so on. There's no. Whereas I truly believe that there are huge patterns in history that can be observed. And it's like a big wave motion that like rises and then crashes and so on. And that's what I see. The rise and fall of civilizations over the past 5,000 years. Okay, and so you've got this without any, if you have had no exposure to the disasters of world history and these sophisticated civilizations that rose like Babylon or Rome and then became very sexually tolerant and then fell, okay, and so there was nothing left but rubble. So if you have had no exposure to that, okay, then you honestly believe this idea that we are moving, it's progress visible all around us, and we're moving to an ideal state, an ideal culture. where it'll be like sort of transnational, global. Everyone will hold hands, right? And everyone will be accepted for what they are. Okay, and there'll be no more prejudice, and the environment will be pure and clean, and so on. I mean, the people have this kind of magical view of utopia that's there in the future, and that this progressivist. And I consider myself a progressive in politics, but the point is this progressivist idea that we are marching towards some perfection, okay, and that the signs of it are the toleration of the educated class, okay, for homosexuality or for changing gender or whatever. To me, it's the opposite. To me, it's symptomatic, okay, of a civilization just before it falls. Right, which is that we are all very tolerant, and we are not passionate, okay, but there are bands of extremely passionate vandals and destroyers, who are moving around the edges of the civilization and who bring it down. Okay, and this preoccupation, it seems to me, with gender issues and with gender identity and so on. Okay, I think it's it's extremely limited in the long run, and in this hyper self-consciousness about who am I? Okay, who am I exactly? Where exactly on the gender? Like a ruler in front of me. Where exactly on the spectrum? Okay, am I located in terms of gender? Well, I mean, this is a kind of navel gazing. Okay, the time when ISIS is beheading people. Okay, in the Mideast, it's like a kind of madness. Okay, like self-absorption. Right? So I mean, the biggest problem, as far as I'm concerned, facing feminism is to what degree, okay, Western feminism can be exported to the world. That is more, I think, the complex issue facing feminism. And to what extent is Western careerist feminism, a bad fit with cultures that are driven by more traditional values, family-centered, child-centered, religious, okay, in orientation. I mean, that is the part that needs working out.
I was at a Hillary rally the other day, and aside from it being really quite extremely boring, it was interesting that her speech went along the lines, a very formulaic kind of line of, first of all, she tick-boxed all the identities that she was in support of: women, disabled people, black people, and then there was transgenders. And then she gave some nods to some vague policy ideas, and then it finished with the same thing again. And though I can understand that politics and politicians have often shown their support for women, for ethnic minorities, but transgenderism is a very specific thing. It's a new a thing that represents a very small amount of people. Why has it got such national attention? Why is it in the news all the time?
It's strange. Yes, the way the endlessness over here in the media about transgender bathrooms. I mean, this has become an obsession. I can hardly pick up the newspaper without yet another argument about transgender bathrooms. Just put in a bathroom, slap a thing on it gender neutral, and let's be done with it. I mean, it's endless. Yeah, yes, I do think it's symptomatic, okay, of people actually, on some level, feeling out of control of the actual important things that are happening on the globe, okay, which is Western civilization is threatened with extinction by suicide bombers, okay, as witnessed in Brussels airport, and so on. And sort of, so it's like a kind of fussiness about these minor things. Well, but the transgender activists are extremely aggressive also, and there's also a kind of there's no doubt a censorship of a discussion of any of these issues. There's been a censorship for at least 25 years now about homosexuality itself. Okay, there was a hope in the 80s that some sort of a gay gene could be found, and then when it didn't, okay, all of a sudden there's utter absolute silence, about it. And the issue about to even phrase the question how homosexuality is caused, that's considered homophobic on the face of it. Okay, I myself think that it's imperative for everyone to ask questions about matters of the development of personality and the development of sexual orientation. And I think that's I'm waiting for some brave young gays, okay, to protest against this censorship, because I think that there are questions to be asked about it. And as for transgender, oh, I really pity young people today in this kind of transgender environment, because the pressures are enormous. Once you feel, well, I'm not quite comfortable, okay, in the gender I was assigned at birth, and okay, and so the pressures are to change, okay, to telegraph it to the world, and then people are pushed along into making choices and surgical interventions, or even taking hormones, which is dangerous. Okay, there's all kinds of medical problems that I believe a lot of people are going to have in the long run when they suddenly realize that taking the hormones of the opposite sex, there are side effects from all of these things. Right? So you have all these people making changes. They're in their teens or even in their college years. You do all kinds of stupid, crazy things. I was doing stupid, crazy things even in my first job. Okay. I don't think I finally got settled, until I was in my late 20s, probably. Okay, and the idea that if I were alive, and my generation are quite different, and I were alive now, I would have ended up making some stupid change. Okay, that was absolutely wrong. It just was a matter of what was fashionable or could make a theatrical gesture at a particular moment. Okay, of course one wants to make gestures and telegraph to the world and. And all that stuff. So I think there are authentically transgender people. That is, people who literally do have had originally a genetic issue. But I think it's a tiny minority of the world population, very tiny. Such cases exist, okay, and it seems to me that we're still, medical science is still developing to help in such people. But the idea that it's now become a fashion statement, as far as I can see, okay, and I think in some cases the mask, okay, this thing about this fixation on changing the gender, and people are now being induced to think that all of their unhappiness, all of their unhappiness in their family life, in their relationships with school, their relationship with society, all of it is due to this gender issue. Well, maybe it isn't. Maybe there are many other issues, psychological issues involved here, that maybe you need to get straight, by whatever. Okay, in the old days, they would, you would have different kinds of guidance that would help you to focus yourself or develop yourself psychologically, spiritually, culturally. Okay, instead now, all unhappiness now is consolidated into the gender issue, which may be a genuine issue for you, but it may not be the whole issue. Okay, and to imagine that by changing the gender or becoming this, this transgender thing, that somehow you're going to, and then we have to get the statistics. Oh, so many transgender people commit suicide. We hear about this. Okay, and if you don't behave nice to them, they're going to commit more suicide, like that. Well, maybe the suicide is not due to the transgender thing. Maybe the suicide is due to the fact that they hoped that the transgender solution would solve their unhappiness. And it didn't. Okay, so don't tell me, okay, that their suicide is entirely due, okay, to the transgender problem. You have absolutely no way of knowing that. Okay, psychology is far too complex, okay, for the system that you're laying on top of it, with all of its social premises.
Do you think in the same way that there is this real fear around talking about transgenderism, a real fear about saying the wrong thing, and a real closing off of the conversation, the same thing is going on campus, in that people are genuinely afraid of talking about sex? Or do you even think that young women are actually afraid of sex, that this rape scandal, this kind of freak out about interrelations between people, is a fear of sex?
So discouraging to me, because when I arrived in college in 1964, I came out of this highly repressive period of the 1950s, where like Doris Day defending her virginity was like the dominant theme in Hollywood movies, and my generation, just after the introduction of the birth control pill, which finally allowed women to control their sexuality for the first time in millennia, we fought back against these in loco parentis rules, the parental rules, and I often tell the story of how when my first semester in college in 1964, we women had to sign in to our dormitories at 11 o'clock at night, whereas in the men's dormitories, the men could run free the entire night. And it was like so obviously and blatantly unfair. We felt like prisoners, being like as if we were living in a convent, for heaven's sakes. So we are the ones who demanded the discarding of the parental rules, and the colleges said to us, okay, the world is dangerous. We must protect you against rape. Okay, and what we said was, we want freedom. We want the freedom to risk rape. That is what my generation fought for, okay? And therefore it is extremely discouraging to me to see this retreat, okay, this surrender on the part of young women of their personal autonomy, okay? And to say that they want the intrusion and surveillance of authority figures over their private lives. And I take a very extreme view, which is that no college or university should be involved in any way in the private lives of the students. Extremely extreme. If a crime is committed, then it should be reported to the police, okay? And if a crime is not committed, right, then forget about it, okay? The students should want freedom first, right? But no, they want hovering. They want to feel the warmth, the warmth of the parental unit, okay? Young women, okay, it's not a question of that they fear sex. It's that they have no idea what sex is, I think. Because they have been raised in this culture where skimpy clothing is simply standard issue, okay? Or they don't have any sense whatever that exposure of the flesh or particular choice of clothing can communicate any messages of sexual interest or readiness. And when you, in the moment you talk like this, your standard contemporary feminists will say, you're blaming the victim, and we have the right to dress as we want. And I said, of course you have the right to dress as you want. Everyone has every right to dress as they want. However, you have to be prepared, okay, for the reality of the world. They do not understand the world as a dangerous place. They have no idea whatever about human psychology. They believe that they think everything is very simple, okay? There are these rules, that everyone obeys rules. They have no sense of psychopathology, okay? They apparently have never even seen the movie Psycho, okay? Hitchcock's Psycho, one of the great movies, of my adolescence. That very nice people can actually be psychopaths. I don't think they understand that, okay? And that you don't mess around with sexuality. It's extremely explosive, okay? It's extremely explosive phenomenon. You must be prepared to defend yourself, to be alert to your environment, wherever you are, and be prepared to defend yourself against anything that might happen, okay, from someone you know or from someone you don't know. But that's not how they were raised. They were raised in a very, what can one say? It's like it's a very sentimental and in a provincial way. They think of the world as basically their playpen. To me, it's an upper middle class bourgeois fantasy, about life, because they've experienced nothing. Okay, now that's not the way I was raised, because I was raised by Italian immigrants. So, an Italian immigrant family. All four of my grandparents were born in Italy, and my mother. Right, and so they have that philosophy. The world is a dangerous place. Watch out. That's what my grandma was saying. Right, and that you always assume, okay, that danger. You don't assume safety. Okay, you see. So I think that they've been raised in a bourgeois buffer. They've been raised wrapped in cotton. I think it goes back to their removal from the old working class realities of life. Okay, they're people who were raised on a farm, understood sex because they saw it in the animals. Okay, people who were raised in a working class environment were used to the idea of violence and like crudity and so on and so forth. The minute you have a bourgeois culture, which is what we have now, okay, you have this whole thing. Well, everything's very nice, everything's very placid, everything's very safe and clean. Okay, they've never seen anything but that. Okay, so then they go to college and they want the world to be like that. Okay, and here's a nice boy. Okay, and let's go to the fraternity party. Well, how can you be so stupid? Okay, so to go to a fraternity party, everyone's like drinking like this and so on. Everyone's like falling down drunk. Hey, want to come up to my room? Okay, and so on. The stupidity is that a fraternity brother says to you, "Do you want to go to my room?" Okay. Everyone knows what that means, okay? That means he's asking, do you want to have sex? She says, okay. She doesn't understand, okay? She's looking at it from this very mild women's point of view, okay? She can't imagine, she doesn't want to have sex with strangers, okay? She's looking for a boyfriend. These girls that don't want to hook up, they really want boyfriends, okay? The boys just want to hook up, okay? But gender studies is telling everyone the sexes are exactly equal, and the only differences are if boys are behaving badly, they have to learn to behave. They have to be more like girls, okay? You have to be more like girls. You have to talk like girls. You have to act like girls. If you don't act like a girl, you don't think like a girl, okay, and so on, then you're obviously, sexist maniac. You have to be curbed, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think that at the heart of all of this is the lack of respect for sexual differences, and that actually, human beings are animals. Okay, we are part of the animal realm. Hello. Okay, and that I've just been in the last couple of weeks watching the birds from my kitchen window. Okay, and there's been this constant fight going on. There's two robins that are constantly at each other. Okay? There's this male robin that's been extremely insistent in pursuing this female robin, and she's giving him a lot of trouble. Okay, and so on, turning her back and walking away. And so on, right? I mean, I wrote about this in Sexual Personality about pigeons. I would observe pigeons doing this, okay? And the guy keeps, the male keeps pursuing her and pursuing her and pursuing her. He's absolutely, and she's turning away. Sometimes they're fighting out there and so on. But he persists, okay? There is a pressure for mating, okay, in the animal kingdom, okay? The man has to persist and make a fool of himself, okay? And the woman has the right to choose. And finally she gives in, okay, like that, right? So this whole thing, the pursuit, the hunt, okay, and the seduction is built into animal nature. Now, human beings should not be behaving like animals. Boys should behave with an honor code. It's an outrage for anyone to commit a felony, okay, an act of aggression against anyone else. The idea of having sex with a woman while she's drunk, this is dishonorable behavior. It's crude, barbaric behavior like the Vandals and the Huns, okay, Vikings of ancient times. This is not the way civilized people should behave. So I'm not excusing them, but I'm saying, girls, wake up. And the girls have been coached now, okay, to imagine, okay, the world is a dangerous place, but not the one that they can control on their own, that they can't defend themselves on their own, that they have to, they expect the omnipresence of authority figures at every stage in their lives. They're college students, and they expect, that whatever, a mistake that they might make at a fraternity party, okay, and then they may regret 6 months later and a year later that somehow this isn't ridiculous. To me, it's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, if a second that any university ever tolerated a complaint of a girl coming in 6 months or a year after an event, okay? Right? If a real rape was committed, go friggin' report it, okay, to the police. Oh no, then I would have to, oh no, that would be horrible for me. And then, but not only that, but then once I made my accusation, it's so terrible, I have to see my rapist, okay, in class. Oh, come on, to me, this is not feminism. This is not feminism, okay? This is just a bourgeois culture of excuses and a projection of there's a kind of prima donna thing of it's like, exposing the wounds. Like, the wounds make you special. Now, the wounds give you privilege.
Is feminism today a middle-class enterprise, a kind of a sorority, a girls' group for white middle-class bourgeois young women who want to stick together and tell the rest of us what to do?
Well, Lena Dunham to me is just absolutely the symbol of a certain kind of neuroticism which masquerades as feminism. I mean, Lena Dunham has a lot of problems that have to do with body image that have nothing whatever to do with the wider society, but have to do with the chaos of her own family life and her own family background. So her feminism is to me a perfect example of the kind of externalization of, just like looking for social causes there's a kind of, this huge fluidity in her inner life that is due to the way she was raised, it was like in the art scene in New York. She was raised with privilege. The way she presents herself physically, to me, it's like, look, I am just presenting myself exactly as I am. I call her the Indra Dworkin of today. This exposure of the body as something ugly and as something as repugnant, and yet somehow as sexual, and the implied blame that if you find me ugly, then you don't understand that I am woman as she is, okay, and you are a sexist, okay. I'm sorry, no, you are just a big pile of pudding, as far as I'm concerned. A big pile of, she's like just a classic neurotic of the old style, and witless and not nearly as intelligent as she seems to think she is. I don't think she has any insight whatever into contemporary politics. The things she says, she finds sexism everywhere, okay. And it's like a monomania, with that type of feminist. I see sexism everywhere. Oh, Hillary is being treated in a sexist manner. Excuse me, Hillary has benefited enormously from being a woman. People don't lay a glove on her. If she were not a woman, okay, people would go after her. All of her opponents would have gone after her, far more severely for her, corruption, her dishonesty, for her her incompetence. I mean, the woman has never succeeded at any job. She's created chaos after chaos, including now all of North North Africa, spilling its refugees into Europe, is due to Hillary, taking out, Gaddafi, and not thinking about what would happen afterward, okay, et cetera. It's just absolutely ridiculous, okay. Like Hillary has benefited enormously, indeed, from being a woman, so that nobody can. Anytime anyone criticizes her, immediately, it's like and they have the vapors. The slightest thing, and in England it would be absurd. I mean, the kind of stinging questions that are normal, okay, in the kind of debate that goes on in the House of Commons. I mean, it's just like to me, it's just juvenile, absolutely juvenile. That feminism has definitely, it seems to me, regressed. I think its high point really. As a movement was in the 1970s, and then it got in the United States. This is my criticism as a Democrat, okay, that it got too much, it got too partisan. That the feminist leaders such as Gloria Steinem were absolutely shameless in not permitting feminism to become simply a tool or agent of the Democratic Party. I mean, I believe that feminism should be beyond partisan politics, and that like Betty Friedan thought that feminism, the women's movement, should welcome into it ordinary wives and mothers and so on, in the mainstream people, and that's why Betty Friedan got into trouble hot water when she referred to the lavender menace, homosexuality, and people think about, it's so homophobic and so on. But I mean, she shouldn't have used that phrase. It didn't make any sense because lesbians had never been associated with lavender. That was gay guys from the Mauve decade and so on. So it didn't quite make sense. But the point is, I think she was kind of right because she was tangling with those fanatical lesbians that I was also, okay, and and I was a lesbian, okay, and they were like some of the most irrational, angry people ever met in my life, ferocious and impossible to dialogue with. What Betty Friedan correctly feared, that if that became the face of feminism, that you would not get the outreach to mainstream women, feminism accepted as a kind of, as kind of populist roots, which I think that's feminism has continued to suffer from that. Even though there are many African American women who sympathize with feminist principles, on the whole, it does remain a white upper middle class movement in the United States.
Up until this point, I've said I'm not a contemporary feminist. I don't align with this because I see it as a white kind of middle class enterprise. It's sort of a girls' club, like a sorority almost, in which there are very strict rules, and there's no question about who prescribes them.
Well, I think one should not permit these fanatics to steal the rubric of feminists. I mean, I think one should say, I am a feminist. I belong to this wing. Okay, we are my wing, or the pro-sex wing, was silenced all this. I mean, I didn't know I belong. I found other people eventually who agreed with me, but I was beaten down and expelled and right from the start. Okay, but I never stopped calling myself a feminist. I just thought I belonged to a dissident wing, far-flung people, and eventually. It took decades. Eventually, we rose up and had that moment in the 1990s. And I thought everything was fine, but instead, we've totally regressed. Once again, back to this horrible white ladies kind of feminism again. But I do believe there are class issues. Okay, I have said from the start that working class women, both white and black and Hispanic, can handle themselves. Okay, and understand the world as a dangerous place. And I noticed it right from the start, like in Philadelphia when I first came to teach here. You can really see working class women on the street. They are aware of their environment. Okay, a guy says something to them, like often just a flirtatious thing, which is very customary in urban areas and so on. They know how to handle it. Okay, whereas the white girls, okay, they like a man spoke to me. And they get all very stiff and nervous, and as they walk by, they don't know how to handle it. I mean, they're like walking victims and so on, right? Whereas I would notice that the Latina women or the African American women, a guy says to them, "Hey, you look great," like that to them, and and right back they would say something witty, or they would say thank you or whatever, and they just the way they moved on the street, there's a level of alertness that you can see in them on the street, okay? And then, if there's like a disagreement on the street, okay? These women of the working class don't have to be taught how to raise their voices. It's the bourgeois girls who have to go to a class and be taught, they have to go to classes and be taught, say no, go and say no, no, say louder, no, louder, no. They have to be taught to say no. So, working class women have to be taught to lower their voices, not to raise them. Okay, so I think that, I think my philosophy probably comes from the fact that my family was originally working class. My father eventually became a college teacher, but my first home is my grandfather's house. He was a factory worker. Okay, and everyone was loud. Okay, the whole immigrant generation extremely loud. And so in African American culture, it has that also. Okay, in their family life, it's the same thing. Everyone is like extremely loud. Then you have to, when you go to the bourgeois office, you see, everyone has to learn, if you're going to work in an office environment, okay, if you're going to survive in it, you have to learn to lower your voice, because those big voices are the voices of an agrarian culture. It's of people yelling to each other over the farmland, dinner, so on. Get the cow has escaped. You're yelling at the top of your lungs. And then in the same thing as a street culture. Also in the urban environments, that's well known. Okay, in ethnic neighborhoods, that people are on the street a lot, okay, and so there's a lot of street life, okay, on the corner and so on, and people are yelling to each other. So I think that working class culture makes women strong, okay, and my goodness, they can be fierce. I mean, they're like Irish working class women, who ran bars, in Philadelphia, who were fierce. Okay, and so it's really a class issue, I think, yeah, rather than race or ethnicity. I briefly was living on a farm when my father got his first job as a teacher coming out. I was born while he was in college, and he got a job as a high school teacher in a farming town. So that's the first place we moved. We lived for a while on the top floor of a farmhouse. So I observed those women. The farming, they were amazing, okay, absolutely. They were, big voices, powerful, okay, and it was in no sense whatever, okay, that they couldn't do what a man could do, okay, and that's what people for thousands of years, that's what in the agrarian culture, the sexes were equal, okay. They had division of labor, okay, but they all did physical work, okay. And so all this weakness thing is a product, okay, of this period after the Industrial Revolution, where women are doing office work, and there's a certain, and that's what should be, where the spotlight should be falling. It's not about men's prejudices about women, and men trying to keep women in their place. That's long gone. I mean, that may have been true in the 50s. It's no longer true. Okay, now it's a self-imposed. Women are doing this to themselves now. Insofar as women are accepting this persona, and they want these parental figures. Okay, now to reinforce in this world, the cage they've constructed for themselves. This is what these white upper middle class feminists want now. They want this parent control, authority controlled world, okay, where they can live in their magic dollhouse and they don't have to change, and they can blame all of their problems and all their unhappiness on something else. Okay, there's something else on there without strengthening themselves. I say it's a matter of they need to develop their ability to speak, to analyze culture, and a lot comes from what I said before, them not knowing anything. They really see the world in terms of, if we can just fix these problems, that the men are responsible for, then we'll have utopia. And they don't understand, the barbarism of history. The overwhelming pattern of history is one of injustice and atrocity and destruction and so on. And they're absorbed with trivialities.
Let's throw caution to the wind and say, if it came down to Trump and Hillary, and you were pushed to vote for somebody, would you, and who would you vote for?
Oh, I would not vote for either of them. I will be voting. I will either be writing in Bernie Sanders' name, or I will vote, as I did last election, for Jill Stein of the Green Party, which a party I contribute to every year. And I cannot vote. I feel that Hillary Clinton is utterly corrupt. Okay, I feel that what her current positions on the campaign trail have been just co-opted from what Bernie Sanders was saying, because her poll testing told her that that's where the party was. Okay, so I think she's absolutely soulless. I think she's incompetent. I mean, I think I've often said Dianne Feinstein, the senator from California, should have been the first woman president in the U.S. She was the former mayor of San Francisco as well. And if there has been no woman president, it's simply because the two most qualified women, including Nancy Pelosi being the other one, the Speaker of the House, the highest position a woman has won in the government, ever in the United States. These women didn't put themselves forward to run. If only she would, withdraw for whatever reason, and then they would put in Biden, probably, Vice President Biden, and I think Biden could win. I mean, I really do. I think Biden could beat any one of the Republican candidates. So I would vote for Biden, even though he's kind of dim. He's like a dim bulb, shall we say? Right. But he's a decent guy, and a kind of we say a mensch, Yiddish slang, and people like him. I think that he's experienced. He knows the world. He has international connections. So I think there would be seamless, transition and so on. I mean, I love Bernie Sanders, but but the point is, it's going to be a steep learning curve should he win, because he doesn't, he hasn't really been in any kind of executive position before this.